So many cancer survivors do everything right. They show up to every follow-up, every scan, every blood test, hoping to hear from their oncologist that everything looks fine. And yet, something important can still be missing. Because when we look a bit closer, the story isn't always as you would expect. And that's because most normal ranges you see on your lab report, they represent population averages, not the optimal ranges for a cancer survivor. And this is one of the biggest blind spots in follow-up care today, even though the science has been pointing to it for years. And like many imbalances, this one is silent. But the good news is that when it's caught early, it's completely reversible. And that early window matters, because once you know what to look for, you realize just how much control you actually have. Hi, I'm Emma Ware. I help cancer survivors reduce recurrence risk using the most up-to-date science-based methods. I'm a biochemist and a registered dietitian, and in this video, I'm going to walk you step by step through what this test is and how it's linked to cancer recurrence, what the science behind that connection, and what it can reveal about your metabolic health. And finally, what is the optimal value to aim for that I guide my patients after cancer. My goal is for you to walk away not just with vital information today, but also the deep understanding of what's happening in your body so you can feel in control. And just to be clear, this video is educational, not medical advice. Always review your results with a qualified healthcare professional who knows your unique situation. Now let's get into the test. Do you know what your fasting blood glucose is? Most people do, and it may be perfect. But here's the thing. Most cancer survivors are never tested for fasting insulin. This is the pathway almost no one talks about, yet it shows up again and again across breast, colorectal, prostate, endometrial, and other solid tumors. One major breast cancer study found that women with fasting insulin above 9 microunits per ml had double the recurrence risk compared to women below 4.5. And when you realize that the normal insulin ranges go all the way up to 29, it tells us that a lot of people are walking around completely unaware of their increased risk. So before we talk about the optimal range, we need to understand why insulin matters in the first place. Most people think of insulin as the sugar hormone, and that's true, but that's only half the story. Insulin actually has two personalities. The first one acts like a key, opening our cells so glucose can move from the blood into the cell as quickly as possible, because we all know the awful complications that come from unbalanced diabetes. The problem starts when insulin is too high for too long, especially in the fasting state when it's supposed to be quiet, because this is where its second personality appears. And this is the part most people never hear from the doctor. Insulin is designed to be a growth accelerator. And because hormones never play alone, when insulin is high, he invites to the growth party another powerful hormone that's even better at telling cells to grow, the IGF-1 or the insulin-like growth factor 1. Just like you can't have a party without food and drinks, the uncontrolled growth is much harder to sustain without the signals from insulin and IGF-1. When that signal to grow stays on day after day, healthy cells are overwhelmed. But for cancer cells, it's a lifeline, because cancer cells are actually very limited in the fuels they can use. Glucose is one of them. So they know how to adapt to make up for that limitation. Some even increase the numbers of insulin receptors on the surface. That means they pull in more fuel and receive stronger signals to grow than the normal cells around them. And another reason the risk extends beyond breast cancer is that IGF-1 receptors are common across many types of tumors. So to recap, together insulin and IGF-1 act like amplifiers of any microscopic tumor that may be already forming. This means that many people will need to take action sooner than later, because what large population studies, such as the US National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or NHA-NES, show, is a marked increase in insulin levels across the general population and across all age groups above 20. And these values tend to be even higher in cancer survivors. This shift is directly linked to worse outcomes and higher recurrence risk, because when insulin stays high, cells divide faster, damaged cells survive when they shouldn't, chronic inflammation increases, and the immune system becomes less effective at spotting cancer cells. In other words, high insulin creates an environment where cancer cells feel comfortable, and as long as that growth party keeps going, other hormones never get the chance to do their job. These are hormones that help to create the conditions where cellular cleanup and repair can happen, especially during deep sleep. They help fix DNA damage, they help the immune system to become more coordinated, they support the strengthening of the immune memory and preserve immune cell function. But they work at their best only when insulin quiets down. That's when the internal environment can shift back towards healing, repair, and protection. So the real question becomes, if insulin plays such a key role in cancer risk, why isn't it part of routine follow-up care? And it's true, we used to simple numbers and clear medical ranges, like blood pressure too high, cholesterol too high, vitamin D too low. So we expect the same for a safe, fasting insulin. But this is where it gets more complicated. Because what most people don't realize is how inconsistent insulin testing is in the scientific research. Some measure total insulin, others use insulin resistance score that combine insulin with fasting glucose. Some use ranges instead of specific numbers, and with all these different methods of measuring insulin, it's simply impossible to derive one universal threshold. Add to that the different types of cancers, different treatments, different ages, different lifestyles. Some people are more at risk than others due to genetics, different levels of inflammation, sleep, and metabolic health. So the same insulin number can mean very different things for two different people. That's why there isn't one universal perfect number. But here's the good news. Even if you don't know your fasting insulin level, you're not alone. At your next doctor's appointment, ask for a fasting insulin test. And while there's no official cancer prevention cutoff yet, here's the practical approach I use with my patients. So when you're fasting, like before a blood test, insulin should be as low as possible. And based on the available data, it's better to be below 9 microunits per ml. But here's the twist. Even if you're above that number, you don't need to stress over it. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. You first need to aim to reduce whatever your current insulin value is, because lowering insulin, even by a few points, could make a big difference. Because the same lifestyle changes that made this reduction possible are proven to significantly lower recurrence risk. And the important thing is that your own body senses the change. In my clinic, again and again, I've seen fasting insulin drop by more than 50% in just 2 months without medication, just by focusing on simple principles like regular sleep, daily movement, exercise, stress management, exposure to natural light, eating plenty of vegetables and healthy fats, and more. So when we realize many of the factors that determine our fasting insulin levels are within our control, it gives us a sense of freedom to know that what we're doing is actually making a difference. I hope this was helpful, because your choices do matter. Your body is very forgiving when it's given the right conditions. So now you know why fasting insulin is important and that you need to follow up on its levels. But this is only the first step. If you want to learn how to lower insulin in a simple and sustainable way, watch this video next.